This is Mike and C, and this is You Can't Handle the Truth.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
And this is our first episode, so we're going to talk about some issues here today that maybe go a little bit outside of the profession. You see so many things out there with billboards and screaming, say, hire me as an attorney. Well, we're going to talk about some of those issues, and we're also going to talk about other things that we have that we can share with the public. And you can like our page, you can subscribe to it, you can follow it, do whatever you want. But we're going to tell you why you can't handle the truth. So with that, let's just touch right into it. We're going to talk about one of the things today is using social media and advancing technologies in the workplace. We have an interesting dynamic here because we have not only just the male-female thing going, but we also have a generation gap, right? Talk about the generation gap. What is it?
So I'm a millennial, right? And you're a boomer.
No, I'm not a boomer. I was born in 74. I think that makes me Generation X.
Yeah.
But, that's kind of what
It's
gives
fun.
me a hard time about.
It's fun now because it feels like that a lot of people want engagement on these social media platforms. And I've started to activate on TikTok, and Mike's always wanted to do a podcast. So it's perfect that we're here and we're doing this and we're giving ourselves to you and introducing you to us and the law.
Yeah, and giving us a little bit of perspective of who we are. I mean, like I said, you see a lot of things out there and you wonder, well, everybody does all these accident cases. We want to shed some light on some of those things and tell you why we do what we do and show that we're just regular people handling cases for the public, and we've been doing it for a lot of years, and I think we do a very good job. So I'm Mike Serrano. This is my 21st year of practicing law. I've practiced within the civil realm my entire career. Went to Florida State University and jumped into practice. I always knew from the beginning I wanted to be a private practice lawyer, and I knew I wanted to have my own law firm. So I didn't work with any of the big firms. It was by choice, just because of my nature. I think I don't fit into the corporate world as much, so I wanted to do my own thing, and I was a pre-med student many moons ago. And when I started working in the hospital, I decided that I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do what I wanted to do since I was a child, which was become a lawyer. I got into this personal injury thing, and I really do it. A lot of times you'll see billboards and people advertising for personal injury that just want to do it because there's a potential for a lucrative outcome. But I've actually done it my whole career. I started out as a defense lawyer, which gave me a good perspective, and I'm here now. And it's 21 years, and it's gone by pretty quick.
Yeah, we're really similar because I have always wanted to be a lawyer as far back as I can remember. It's funny, my parents recently cleaned out my childhood home, and they save everything. So I have all of my school stuff, and it all says back to even to as early as 5th grade that I wanted to be a lawyer. So that's something that's always been in the cards for me. Athletics was a huge part of my life. So I played softball in undergrad and then ultimately wanted to be like a sports agent. So I went to one of the 3 schools in the nation that offered like a sports law certificate program, which was Florida Coastal School of Law. Interesting fact, that law school no longer exists. So we can get into that at some point. That's a good story.
I didn't know that.
That's a good story. Yeah. So, but I passed the bar, so it's not a problem.
Yeah. You're here.
Yep. And so for the last 7 years, I've been practicing mostly in large volume firms, those advertising firms that, are just like mills. So they turn over cases really quickly. There are good attorneys there. There are good litigators there, but you don't get that personal interaction. Even though I did try and be that lawyer in those environments, it was very hard to do. So last year, about this time, me and you got put together through the industry, and
right.
It's been great ever since.
Yeah.
So it's been fun to be in this like smaller practice. It's been a huge adjustment for me, just having to deal with the difference of the day to day. But it's really nice because you actually personally know all your clients. They're really easy to work with. It makes for a much better experience as an attorney, really.
Yeah, and getting to know the clients is a good thing over here. I mean, we actually speak to the clients, and when that's not just a cliche, we actually talk to them, and the clients know us. The staff works for us and not for the clients, and that's just kind of what we do here.
And you know what I really love working with you is like, I only know personal injury. That's all I've been taught. That's all I know how to do. But you know a little bit more about some other areas, and you specifically do employment. So I think that's pretty cool, and you might want to talk about a little bit with the type of employment case.
Yeah, so a lot of this, the reason why we're doing this is that to have a forum where questions can be asked. Things that sometimes you need to elaborate further on a legal question. You can't just give a one liner, but a lot of times you can. And so if there's things that you want to know in the employment sector, whatever that may be, employment has such a broad range of topics. Your accident case, whatever you want to talk about, that's part of what we're doing here. And again, the main goal is that whether you can handle the truth or not, and that's going to be our big push for these segments as we move forward.
Because I think the truth in our industry is really hard. Like what we deal with on a day-to-day basis,
Right.
it is very sad. And sometimes we realize we start talking about it to people who aren't attorneys. It's not easy to talk about. So
Right.
I hope that you all understand that as we move forward. We're just trying to give information that we know best to give, even though it might not be all rainbows. And
It's not going to be all rainbows. And I tell clients all the time, it's like a cliche, but it's true. This business is about proof, not truth. We have to be able to prove it. So 9 times out of 10, I'll believe what the client is telling me. But at the end of the day, do we have the proof? And that's really our burden. And that's always the issue.
And not only do we have the proof, but is the law not in our favor? Because Florida law is so difficult. There's so many burdens
Yeah.
that we have to prove
Yeah.
as plaintiffs' attorneys that, you can't just go on a premises and fall or get injured and they be responsible. There has to be steps that they've had to take and that, consumers have to take in order for us to be able to pursue a legitimate claim. And that's just the hard truth.
Right. And people think sometimes they can go to a facility and fall, and all of a sudden that's the facility's issue. Well, that's not the case. There's got to be some active or passive negligence. Like there's got to be something that they did wrong. So, a lot of us get a bad name because you got some cases out there that are being pursued that are not legit. But you got, for each one of those, you got someone that actually did get injured because someone did something wrong. And so that's the key here is who did something wrong? Did anybody do something wrong? And then can we prove it? So we want to give a little bit of perspective on that and show you where we're at. Speaking of that, we have a case that we want to talk about, right? And
Yeah.
hopefully people will be interested in.
Yeah. And so we actually have a motion to dismiss hearing on one of the counts tomorrow. This particular case, actually, the plaintiff in this case, it ends up being a family. It's an entire family, and actually one of the family members is an attorney. So that's interesting. That's my first attorney client. But ultimately, she was rear-ended by two. There was a company that Enterprise employs to shuttle their vehicles, clean their vehicles. And ultimately, so you've got two major companies that are the defendants in this case, OpMax and Enterprise. And the rub with this is that there's no insurance. So, the OpMax does not have coverage for shuttling vehicles. So they're trying to say, oh, sorry, we just don't have insurance for the one thing that is it within our job description. And then Enterprise, which we call Elco, that's how, you sue them, they're Elco. They ultimately contract with them to do these services, and they're kind of trying to scapegoat out of this particular case because they're saying, oh, we're not liable, it wasn't our employees, even though they contract with them to do this work.
So the issue becomes, again, why is, in this case, the rental car company, why are they liable in this case? So we have to prove that. And they defend these vigorously because they have a lot of protections statutorily that say that they're not. And a lot of it depends on the facts of the case. But it's interesting because you got people here that are injured, one of which has had, I believe, a surgery.
She's had like 5 surgeries.
Yeah. So, it's a matter of, well, we don't have insurance, and the arrangement between the rental car company and the other company is just that we don't have, there's not an insurance contract or coverage. and so it leaves the other person out. Am I explaining it right?
Yeah, no, and I think, well, this leads to the bigger issue here being personal injury attorneys in the state of Florida,
Right.
is that there's companies that are just allowed to do this.
Right.
Allowed to do this. There is no structure set up to keep them accountable. And then I think it also goes back to the fact that Florida is the only state that's a non-mandatory bodily injury state.
Right.
So we're the only state in the USA who does not mandate that the drivers on the road have to carry bodily injury liability coverage. And so I think that that sets the tone for everything to trickle down and allow these inadequacies to happen, to occur. It allows these massive companies to just say, oh, sorry, our insurance doesn't cover that. Like,
Right.
what do you mean your insurance doesn't cover that? That's what it's within your employees' job descriptions to do that. How do you get away with not having auto coverage under your general liability policy?
Right.
So, there's a lot bigger issue here. There's going to be a lot to unpack in this case, and they're going to, defend it vigorously because it's potentially worth, millions of dollars just because of the damages to our client, because her daughters were also involved in the incident too.
Right. Which brings me to a point. I don't want to go off topic too much, but a lot of times over the years, you get people that come in to see us and they'll tell you, well, I asked them, well, what kind of insurance do you have? And I always ask to see the policy. You know where I'm going with this. And and they'll always say the same thing. They'll say, I have full coverage.
Like the death.
And full coverage is just the minimum. It means you have what's called personal injury protection and you have property damage liability, so that if you wreck, you cause an accident, you have to pay for the damage to their car, which is, that's
There's no coverage to you.
right.
So,
That's not to you. That's for the liability part of it.
right. So these insurance companies, this industry, they use basically full coverage as like a predatory shield for
Right.
them. So you feel like as a consumer, oh, I've got full coverage, I'm fine.
Right.
When actually, in all actuality, when in all actuality, full coverage is nothing.
Right.
Provides
It's the
nothing.
basics. I mean, you don't have to have coverage for causing bodily injury to someone else. It's not required. I know there's been some talk about, I think the bill has been up, last several years at the legislature, and they don't pass it, but they're talking about a mandatory bodily injury, which I think you said, is it all the states that have it, or is it?
Every single state in the
Okay.
USA has mandatory bodily injury liability coverage, except for
And you're sure about that? You looked that up? Okay.
the Google
Every
machine.
single-
The Google machine said it was true, so it must
Okay.
be true, right?
All right. Yeah, I guess so. But the bottom line is we don't have it here, and that's what makes uninsured motorist coverage very, very valuable, because the insurance company has to present it to you, but a lot of times you'll reject it in writing on electronically without even knowing it. And if you don't have that coverage and you get into an accident with someone that has no bodily injury coverage, because remember, it's not required, then you have a situation where, how you can pay for your bills. And you get a lot of smart alecks that'll tell you, I got friends that'll tell me, well, that's what health insurance is for. You're right. But health insurance doesn't cover future medical bills that you're reasonably certain to incur in the future, and doesn't cover pain and suffering. And it's always okay when it's someone else, but when it's you, all of a sudden, well, I got to hire a lawyer. I got to figure out how to get this, and now I can't get compensated because I have 5 surgeries, and maybe the health insurance is going to cover the past medical bills, but what about the bills you're reasonably certain to incur in the future that is part of a personal injury claim? Those are things that health insurance won't cover.
I've had an insurance agent tell me that before.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's
Auto insurance?
an auto insurance agent
Okay.
tell me that before. He's trying to sell me auto insurance.
Okay.
Before, and I was like, if you're telling people this, then no wonder people don't know what type of coverages to carry. And
Right.
there's actually a whole slew of litigation happening right now. It's like they call them the e-signature cases, where they talk about the UN rejection forms that you sign and the fact that they are basically fraudulent in nature, because what happens is you go through these programs, you elect the coverages you want, and then after the fact, they're sending you these UN rejection letters. So you don't really understand what you're rejecting, what you're signing. And I think, a lot of people don't really read what they're signing. So, you're maybe going off of what that agent's telling you, oh, just reject this. And that's insurance agents directly. Now people do it online, so they really don't know what to carry. So a huge part of this podcast too, I think, is to be informative and inform people about insurance coverages, the type of insurance coverage you should carry. And I think we have a really great perspective on it because we see what happens firsthand when people aren't carrying the appropriate coverages. And ultimately, they just get screwed.
Yeah, it's just, this is part of why we're doing this. It's a lot of questions. I think it's the FAQs, but in a live version of the podcast. And if some people don't care about these things, a lot of people do though. Like I said, when the time comes to have a case, that's when they care about it the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you have questions, please leave them in the comments so that we can address them in the future episodes, because that's what we want to be able to do, is inform you of what we know in order for you to be sufficiently covered and be prepared if you ever do happen to get in an accident. We're kind of like the attorneys that you never want to have.
Right.
So thanks so much for listening. Please like, follow, subscribe, share, and comment as much as you can. We're more than happy to answer your questions. We're happy to be here and to help inform you here through this podcast. Bye.